Keanu Reeves had always found solace in the quiet stretches of road that cut through the heart of nowhere. The engine of his car hummed steadily, the only sound as he cruised down the highway, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. It was late, well, past midnight, and the roads were empty as they often were when Keanu found time to clear his mind. No paparazzi, no fans, just the comforting solitude that only long drives could provide. But just as he settled into the rhythm of the road, something unexpected happened. A sharp pop echoed through the car. Keanu felt the vehicle lurch slightly before the unmistakable sound of a flat tire filled the quiet night air. "Great," he muttered to himself, pulling over to the side of the road. His heart sank as he stepped out of the car and examined the flat tire. It was bad, really bad. He had no spare, no jack, and certainly no way to fix it. His mind quickly raced through the possibilities. There was no phone signal in this remote area, no roadside assistance, and no sign of life for miles. He was completely stranded. Keanu exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. This wasn't the kind of solitude he had hoped for. The stars, above once comforting, now felt distant and uncaring. What now? He whispered to himself. He opened the trunk and sifted through his things, hoping to find something that could help, but all he found was a few items that weren't going to fix the situation. His thoughts spiraled, feeling more and more helpless by the second. Just as Keanu was about to give in to frustration, he spotted something in the distance, a shadow moving steadily towards him. "Who's that?" he thought, squinting into the darkness. The figure was getting closer, and soon Keanu could make out the shape of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, and in his early 40s. The man didn't seem to have any hesitation, walking straight towards Keanu with a purposeful stride. As he got closer, Keanu could see his face. A man of African descent, his expression calm but full of a certain quiet strength. "Need some help?" the man called out, his voice breaking the silence of the night. Keanu hesitated for a moment, trying to gauge whether this stranger was someone he could trust, but with no other options, he nodded. "Yeah, I could use some help." The man flashed a reassuring smile as he closed the distance between them. "I'm Marcus," he said, extending his hand. "Looks like you're stuck, huh?" Keanu shook his hand, still feeling a bit unsure but grateful. "Keanu, yeah, it's a mess. I didn't think I'd end up stranded like this out here." Marcus shrugged nonchalantly, pulling out a toolbox from the back of his truck. "Well, I was just passing through. Lucky I saw you. Let's get this tire fixed, and we can chat while I do it." As Marcus got to work on the tire, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a random encounter. Something about Marcus, his calm demeanor, the way he appeared out of nowhere, seemed a little too perfect. But for now, Keanu pushed those thoughts aside. He needed help, and this stranger seemed willing to give it. Still, as the minutes passed and the road stretched on, Keanu couldn't help but wonder, how exactly did this man end up here at this exact moment? And just like that, the uncertainty hung in the air, both between them and within Keanu's mind. As Marcus worked steadily, his hands moving with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times, Keanu watched him with growing curiosity. Despite the fact that they were strangers, Marcus's confidence seemed to have a calming effect. There was no panic, no rush in the way he moved. It was almost as if fixing a flat tire in the middle of nowhere was just another part of his routine. "So, how long have you been doing this?" Keanu asked, trying to make small talk as Marcus unscrewed the bolts on the flat tire. "Are you a mechanic or something?" Marcus chuckled softly, glancing up with a grin. "I suppose you could say that, but it's not exactly my profession anymore, just a little side job now." Keanu nodded, intrigued. "What do you do now, then?" For a moment, Marcus hesitated as if deciding whether to share more. Then, with a shrug, he answered, "I used to have a business, a big one. Successful, you know. But life changes, things fall apart. Now I just help people when I can, make ends meet any way I can." Keanu raised an eyebrow. He had to admit, the cryptic answer only fueled his curiosity. "What happened?" "You lost the business." Marcus's face hardened for a brief moment, but then he softened, almost as if he was reminded of something important. "Yeah, something like that. The world doesn't always give you what you expect. I learned that the hard way. Keanu could sense there was more to the story, but he wasn't going to press. He knew what it felt like to have a past full of regrets and unanswered questions, and with his own experiences, he wasn't sure he was ready to hear someone else's painful tale just yet. He decided to steer the conversation in a different direction. "You mentioned helping people," Keanu said, changing the subject. "How do you end up out here in the middle of nowhere, fixing cars for strangers like me?" Marcus paused, wiping, his hands on a rag. His eyes narrowed slightly as if trying to find the right words. "You could say it's fate. Or maybe just the way things work out. Sometimes you end up exactly where you need to be, even when you don't know it." Keanu's brows furrowed. There was something oddly poetic about the way Marcus spoke, as though he believed in something deeper than coincidence. Something Keanu couldn't quite put his finger on. "Fate, huh?" Keanu said, chuckling a bit. "I never really thought much about that stuff. I guess I'm more of a take things as they come kind of guy." Marcus smiled, but there was a knowing look in his eyes. "I get that, but sometimes things happen for a reason, whether you believe it or not." Keanu couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. For a split second, he felt as though Marcus's words were more than just a philosophical musing. They felt like a warning. But he pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. "I appreciate you helping me out," Keanu said, trying to break the growing tension. "I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I'm lucky you showed up when you did." Marcus finished tightening the last bolt, then stood up and stretched his arms. "No need to thank me. I'm just doing what anyone would do in my shoes. I'm here now, and that's what matters." Keanu didn't respond immediately. There was something about Marcus's casual demeanor that kept Keanu's mind racing. The man's words were always laced with something deeper, something Keanu couldn't fully understand yet. As Marcus stepped back and admired his work, Keanu felt a sense of relief wash over him. The car was fixed, the crisis had been averted, but for some reason Keanu couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this encounter was more than just a coincidence. "All right, looks good as new," Marcus said, wiping his hands together, and giving Keanu a nod. "You should be good to go, but be careful out here, okay? You never know what you might run into." Keanu, still unsure of the strange connection he felt to this man, simply nodded. "I'll be careful, and thanks again." Marcus grinned and gave a brief wave as he walked away. "Take care of yourself, Keanu." Just as Keanu was about to get back into his car, he glanced over his shoulder. Marcus was already disappearing into the night, vanishing into the shadows. As quickly as he had appeared, Keanu's heart skipped a beat. There was something off about the way he had left so abruptly, like he wasn't even real. Was it all just a dream, Keanu thought? Had he really been there? Shaking his head, Keanu got into his car and started the engine. As he pulled back onto the road, the silence of the night settled around him again. The flat tire was fixed, but there was a lingering sense of unease in the pit of his stomach. He couldn't help but wonder, who exactly was Marcus? And why did this encounter feel so surreal? Little did Keanu know, this was just the beginning of a much stranger journey than he could ever have imagined. Keanu Reeves drove down the dark, desolate highway, the hum of the tires against the pavement almost soothing now that his car was running smoothly again. The tension that had gripped him since his unexpected encounter with Marcus slowly began to fade. Yet despite the relief of the flat tire being fixed, something lingered in the back of his mind, gnawing at him. The strange words Marcus had said, his mysterious disappearance, and the unsettling feeling that he wasn't alone. Keanu couldn't shake the thought that something was wrong. Something wasn't quite right. As he continued on the winding road, Keanu's grip on the steering wheel tightened. The night was eerily quiet, too quiet. It almost felt like he was being followed, like he wasn't truly alone. He glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the same shadowy figure of Marcus trailing him. But the road behind him was empty, stretching into the nothingness. Get a grip, Keanu, he thought. It's just your mind playing tricks on you. You've been through worse. Just as he was about to convince himself to stop overthinking, his headlights flickered. The car jerked. Unexpectedly, and for a moment the engine sputtered. Keanu's heart raced as he pulled over to the side of the road again, frustrated. "What now?" he muttered, putting the car in park. He got out and popped the hood, trying to see if something had gone wrong under the engine. It wasn't the tire this time, but still, something felt off. As Keanu peered into the engine, something caught his eye. From the corner of his vision, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance. He tensed, squinting into the dark. The vehicle was driving much faster than it should have been on a deserted highway, its lights growing larger by the second. His unease spiked. The car was heading straight toward him. "It's too fast," Keanu thought. "Why is it coming this way?" The car swerved slightly, making an erratic turn as it approached. Keanu took a step back, unsure of what to do. Was it just another driver passing by, or was something more sinister about to unfold? The vehicle screeched to a halt just behind him, its engine rumbling like a predator closing in on its prey. Keanu's heart hammered in his chest as the driver's side door opened. A tall man stepped out, and immediately Keanu felt a surge of fear. The figure looked familiar. Too familiar. It was Marcus. But something was wrong. This wasn't the Marcus who had helped him earlier. This was someone else entirely, his eyes dark and filled with an intense energy that felt almost predatory. "You're still out here," Marcus said, his voice low, almost too calm. "I didn't think you'd be so careless." Keanu froze, his mouth dry. What are you talking about?" He tried to steady his voice, but the words came out shaky. Marcus took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "You should have left when I told you to. It's dangerous out here, Keanu, not just for you, but for everyone around you." Keanu's mind raced. This can't be real. This is just some bad dream. What's going on? What's happening? Who are you really? Keanu asked, the words escaping him before he could stop them. Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he just looked at Keanu with a strange, unreadable expression. Then, his lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't comforting. It was almost as if he were amused by Keanu's confusion. "You've already met the version of me that helps. But now," Marcus paused, his tone darkening, "you're about to meet the version of me that enforces the rules." Keanu took a step back, his heart thudding in his chest. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body remained frozen in place. This wasn't the man who'd fixed his tire. This was something else entirely. Before Keanu could say anything else, the man's figure blurred for a split second. Then he vanished, reappearing right in front of Keanu. The sudden movement was so fast it left Keanu breathless, like he was staring at a ghost or some kind of shadow. What are you?" Keanu stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus's smile grew wider, but it was colder now and much more intense. "I'm the answer to the question you didn't know you were asking. I'm the thing that keeps you from slipping away." Keanu's confusion deepened. Was this man a figment of his imagination? A dream? Or was he something more, something Keanu couldn't comprehend? Marcus stepped back, his presence still looming. "You'll understand soon enough, Keanu. There's much more at stake than you realize." And just as quickly as he had appeared, Marcus turned, walking back toward his car without another word. The headlights of the vehicle dimmed as he got in and drove off into the night, leaving Keanu standing there, his mind racing, heart pounding in his chest. The silence returned, but it was no longer comforting. It felt like the calm before a storm. Keanu slowly made his way back to his car, his legs shaky beneath him. What had just happened? Who was Marcus? Why did it feel like his life was suddenly spiraling out of control? But despite the overwhelming confusion, one thing was certain. Keanu was no longer alone on this road. Whatever Marcus was, whatever this strange encounter was, it wasn't over. It was only just beginning. As Keanu got back into the car, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play here than just a flat tire and an odd encounter. Something was coming for him, and he didn't know if he was prepared to face it. The road stretched on ahead, but Keanu couldn't help but feel as though he was being drawn into something much darker than he had ever anticipated. Keanu's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white against the leather. His mind was reeling from what had just happened. Marcus, that strange, unsettling version of him, and the cryptic words that lingered in the air. Every nerve in Keanu's body felt like it was on high alert. But the road in front of him was empty. The hum of the car engine was the only sound in the otherwise silent night, creating an eerie tension that clung to the air. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Marcus's car trailing him, but it remained empty. The darkness outside seemed to stretch forever, swallowing up any trace of the encounter. Yet Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. It was as if the world around him had changed in an instant, as if nothing was quite as it seemed anymore. The events of the past hour, the tire, Marcus's help, his cryptic warnings, spun in his head like a whirlwind. What was all of that? Who was that man? Suddenly the car jerked, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. Keanu slammed his foot on the brake, his heart pounding as the car swerved to the side of the road. The headlights flickered once again and then went out completely. "What the hell?" Keanu cursed, trying to restart the car. He turned the key in the ignition, but the engine wouldn't turn over. The quiet that had previously felt like a comfort now pressed down on him like a heavy weight. In that moment it became painfully clear. He was stranded again. Keanu groaned, resting his forehead against the steering wheel in frustration. This can't be happening again. He knew he couldn't just sit there and hope things would fix themselves. He had to act. Grabbing his flashlight, Keanu stepped out of the car. The night air was cooler now, a slight chill brushing against his skin. As he popped the hood of the car, he tried to focus on the engine, but in the back of his mind the image of Marcus reappeared. Was this a coincidence? Keanu thought. Was Marcus involved in all of this somehow? His thoughts were interrupted by a rustling sound from the woods that lined the side of the road. Keanu froze, his flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. For a moment, there was nothing, just the wind stirring the trees. But then, a figure emerged from the shadows. It wasn't Marcus this time. The man who stepped into the light was tall, wearing a dark hoodie that obscured much of his face. His movements were slow and deliberate, almost too calculated, as if he were waiting for Keanu to notice him. A chill ran down Keanu's spine. The air seemed to grow thicker as the stranger stepped closer, his footsteps crunching on the gravel. "Need some help?" the man asked, his voice low and almost mechanical. Keanu's instinct was to stay cautious. His heart still racing from the earlier encounter with Marcus. He didn't trust this man, but he was also stranded again, and there was no one else around. He weighed his options, briefly considering trying to fix the car himself. But then, again, he had no idea what he was doing. "Yeah," Keanu said, forcing a calm tone. "The car won't start." The man nodded, walking toward the engine without another word. His movements were precise, as if he had done this many times before. Keanu stepped back, trying to make sense of the situation. "Who are you?" Keanu asked, his voice cautious. The man glanced over his shoulder, his eyes almost gleaming in the dim light. "Does it matter?" he replied cryptically. Keanu frowned. "I guess not. But you're out here too, in the middle of nowhere. What are you doing here?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the hood of the car, inspecting the wiring. Keanu couldn't help but notice how efficient and quick the man was, almost too skilled for a random passerby. It felt like there was something more to this encounter than just a helpful stranger fixing a car. "Just passing through," the man finally answered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Just like you, I suppose?" The words echoed in Keanu's mind. "Just like you." It felt like the man wasn't talking about the car at all, like there was something deeper being said here, something that Keanu wasn't quite picking up on. The man worked in silence, and Keanu couldn't help but feel a growing unease. Every movement seemed deliberate, like he was performing a task he had done countless times before. But what was the task? What was he really doing? Suddenly, the man stepped back, wiping his hands on a rag and giving Keanu a nod. "There, should work now." Keanu stared at the engine, his mind still clouded with confusion. "How do you know so much about cars?" The man simply shrugged, offering no further explanation. "Doesn't matter. Cars work now. You're good to go." Keanu wasn't sure whether to thank him or be suspicious. His instincts told him this was all too strange to be a coincidence. And just like that, The man turned to leave. "Wait," Keanu called, out, taking a step forward. "Who are you really?" The man paused, turning back slightly. His eyes glinted with an almost unsettling calmness. "Sometimes it's not about who you are, but what you need in the moment." With that, the stranger disappeared back into the shadows from which he had emerged, leaving Keanu standing there, once again with more questions than answers. Shaken, Keanu got back into his car. The engine roared to life with ease, and the headlights flickered on, cutting through the darkness. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, something was watching him, waiting for him to unravel the mystery. The road stretched before him, empty and silent, but Keanu couldn't ignore the rising tension in his chest. What was happening? The strange man, Marcus, the flat tire, the cryptic warnings. It all felt like it was building up to something, something he couldn't avoid. Keanu pressed his foot on the accelerator, but the road ahead felt more like a trap now, a dark and winding path leading him deeper into uncertainty. And just as he thought he might find some kind of clarity, a low growl vibrated through the ground beneath him, sending an ice-cold chill through his veins. Whatever this was, Keanu knew it was only just beginning, and it was coming for him. Keanu's hands gripped the steering wheel even tighter as the unsettling growl reverberated beneath the car. His heart pounded in his chest, the weight of the moment crashing down on him like a tidal wave. Something was out there, something that had been following him from the moment he met Marcus. It was no longer a coincidence, no longer just strange encounters. The fear that had been growing inside him finally bubbled to the surface, and his mind raced. As he tried to make sense of everything that had happened, the car's headlights barely cut through the darkness ahead. The empty road stretched endlessly, and the oppressive silence around him seemed to close in. Keanu's breath quickened. His fingers hovered over the radio, instinctively trying to find some noise, some distraction. But the static on the dial was all he could hear. "What am I doing?" Keanu thought, his mind spinning. What the hell is going on? He had come across all sorts of odd things in his life. Movies, fans, even bizarre rumors. But nothing compared to this. The strange man, the cryptic warning, Marcus's mysterious behavior. It all felt so surreal. It wasn't just paranoia. It was as if something larger was at play, something he couldn't escape. Suddenly, the car's engine sputtered again, jerking him out of his thoughts. The headlights flickered once more, and Keanu swore under his breath. His stomach churned. It was as if the road itself was conspiring against him. He pulled over once again, frustrated and scared. Not this again. Before he could even think to pop the hood, the car lurched violently. The ground beneath him trembled, and for a brief moment it felt like the earth was shaking. The noise that followed was so loud it drowned out everything. Screeching. Metal, deep rumbling. A monstrous sound like the earth was splitting open. Keanu's heart skipped a beat as he tried to make sense of the chaos. The growling sound returned, louder this time, vibrating through the entire car. He turned toward the rearview mirror, half expecting to see some kind of beast or figure closing in on him, but all he saw was his own reflection, pale and wide-eyed. It was then that a shadow appeared in the distance, a figure. No, it wasn't a man, it was much larger, darker. The silhouette of something massive moved toward him. The growl continued, now joined by the sound of heavy footsteps. Keanu's breath caught in his throat. Panic surged within him, but something inside told him to stay calm. Something told him this was no coincidence. This moment was the culmination of everything that had been building up since the flat tire. The appearance of Marcus, the strange man, the unsettling warnings. It was all leading to this. He knew he had to act. Without thinking, Keanu jumped out of the car and sprinted toward the shadowy figure. As he got closer, his heart pounded in his chest, but his legs carried him forward as if guided by instinct. When he was close enough, the shadow stopped moving, revealing itself more clearly in the dim light. It was a man, a familiar man. "Marcus!" Keanu shouted, his voice hoarse with fear. "What the hell is going on?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He stood still, looking almost sad, yet something about his presence felt menacing. His eyes, dark and unreadable, locked onto Keanu. You're not supposed to be here, Marcus said, his voice low and steady, a strange sadness in his tone. This wasn't part of the plan. What plan? Keanu demanded, his voice shaking. What is this? What are you talking about? Marcus took a step forward, his gaze never leaving Keanu's. Everything you've experienced, every step you've taken since we met, it's been leading to this moment, this road, this encounter. It's all been designed to bring you here to this point. Keanu's mind was spinning. Designed by who? Why? Marcus finally broke eye contact, looking down at the ground as if ashamed. By forces beyond your understanding, forces you can't fight, forces that are already here. Keanu's chest tightened. What do you mean, already here? What's coming for me? A dark chuckle escaped Marcus's lips, but it was empty, hollow. He finally looked up, his expression harder now. What's coming for you isn't just about you, it's about everything. This entire world, this reality. And you've been chosen. Keanu's breath hitched in his throat, his mind racing. To make sense of what Marcus was saying, chosen, what does that even mean? Before he could ask more, a rumble shook the earth once more, followed by a sharp, piercing howl that sent chills down Keanu's spine. Something was happening, something was about to change, and he knew he couldn't stop it. I don't understand, Keanu said, his voice trembling. What do you want from me? Why are you doing this? Marcus sighed deeply, his expression full of regret. I didn't want to get you involved. But the path you're on now, you're part of something bigger. Something far beyond your comprehension. You've been marked, Keanu. You can't escape this. The ground beneath them trembled again, and Keanu looked around, panic rising. There was no escape. Whatever this was, whatever Marcus had been leading him toward, it was happening. He wasn't ready for it, but there was no turning back. Marcus! Keanu shouted, stepping forward. What the hell is going on? What do you want me to do? Marcus's eyes darkened as he stepped closer, his voice taking on a dangerous tone. You're the one who asked for help. But in the end, there's only one choice, and that choice will decide everything. Keanu's mind swirled with confusion and fear. He had no idea what was happening, no idea how to stop it. But one thing was clear. Whatever this was, whatever was coming, it wasn't something he could outrun. In that moment, the darkness of the night seemed to swallow them whole, and the growls and howls grew louder. Keanu realized with a jolt that this wasn't just a moment of crisis. It was the beginning of something far darker than he could have ever imagined. And it was coming for him. Keanu's breath was shallow as he stood frozen in the middle of the road, his mind racing to catch up with the chaos unfolding around him. The darkness that enveloped him seemed to press in from all sides, suffocating him. Marcus, standing there with his cryptic words, seemed less like a man and more like a harbinger of doom. Keanu's chest tightened as the ground beneath him continued to shake, and the distant growls and howls pierced through the air like a haunting symphony. But then, just as suddenly as it had all started, the noise ceased. The earth stopped trembling, and a heavy silence took its place. Keanu's heart thudded in his ears as he tried to make sense of the surreal situation he found himself in. What was happening? Was he losing his mind? Was this some kind of twisted dream? Marcus! Keanu's voice cracked, barely above a whisper, as he looked at the man standing before him. Please, tell me what's going on. I don't understand. Why me? Why now? Marcus, standing motionless, sighed deeply. The weight of his gaze seemed to soften for a moment, as though he could see the fear and confusion in Keanu's eyes. Slowly he spoke, his voice low but filled with a sorrow that Keanu hadn't expected. It's not just you, Keanu. It never was. Keanu felt a chill creep down his spine, but he stood his ground. Then who else? What do you mean? What is this all about? Marcus looked at the sky above them, as if searching for the right words. This isn't just a coincidence. This isn't just about a flat tire or a strange encounter in the woods. This is a path you were always meant to walk. There's a larger force at play here, one that's been shaping your life in ways you could never understand. Keanu's mind reeled. What? No, I don't get it. You're telling me my whole life everything I've done has been leading to this? Marcus nodded solemnly. You've been chosen, Keanu. Chosen for something beyond your understanding. Your past, your career, your fame. It was all a setup. But it wasn't a setup for you to be a hero or a star. It was a setup for you to see. To see the things others cannot see. To face things that others cannot face. Keanu felt the blood drain from his face. His entire life flashed before his eyes. Movies, fame, public adoration. But suddenly it felt hollow, like none of it had mattered. He had been a part of something larger than he had ever realized. Something dark. Why? Keanu asked quietly. Why me? Why now? Marcus's expression softened. Because you're the one who can see it. You've always been able to see through the surface, even when you didn't know it. You've been walking a thin line between reality and something else, something hidden, and now that line is about to break. Keanu stared at Marcus, struggling to comprehend what he was hearing. But I don't want any of this. I didn't ask for this, I just wanted a quiet life. Marcus stepped closer, his face serious. You can't escape it, Keanu. None of us can. There are forces at play in this world that you cannot fight. But you can understand them, and by understanding you can control your fate. A deep sense of despair washed over Keanu, but he refused to let it consume him. I don't know if I believe you, he said, his voice steady but unsure. I don't understand any of this. Marcus gave a small, rueful smile. You will. In time, you'll understand more than you want to. But for now, you have to make a choice. A choice, Keanu echoed, his voice tinged with disbelief. What kind of choice? Marcus didn't answer. Right away. Instead, he looked off into the distance, his gaze focused on something Keanu couldn't see. The choice to face what's coming, to accept your role or to try to fight it and lose everything. The choice to be part of something greater or to stand alone against the darkness. Keanu stood there, his mind spinning. There was so much that didn't make sense, so much he couldn't possibly comprehend. The weight of Marcus's words was almost suffocating, and yet in the back of his mind a thought began to form. Could he really walk away from this? Could he ignore what was happening around him and live a normal life again? But the longer he stood in the silence, the more he realized that there was no turning back. The world he had known, the life he had lived, was no longer enough. There were forces at work, forces that were beyond his control, and he was in the middle of it. If he didn't make a choice, he would be swept away by something he couldn't outrun. Keanu looked at Marcus, his resolve hardening. All right. Tell me what I need to do. Marcus's eyes flickered with something that resembled approval. You've made the right choice. You're stronger than you think, Keanu. But remember, the path ahead will not be easy. You will face trials, and not everyone will make it through. But if you stay true to yourself, if you face the truth, you can overcome it. Keanu felt a wave of determination wash over him. He wasn't sure what lay ahead, but he knew he had no choice but to face it. The fear that had been building up inside him slowly began to dissipate, replaced by a fierce sense of purpose. He wasn't going to run anymore. He was going to stand his ground, whatever the cost. As he turned to face the road ahead, Marcus's words echoed in his mind. The choice to face what's coming. Keanu took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision he had just made. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it head-on. There was no turning back now. But deep down, he knew that this was just the beginning. The truth, the darkness, the forces at play. Everything he had known and understood was about to be shattered, and the journey to unravel the mystery of his life had only just begun. Keanu stood still, staring at the open road ahead, feeling both the gravity of the decision he had just made and the weight of the unknown. The silence around him felt all-encompassing, as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to take the next step. His mind raced, trying to process everything Marcus had revealed, trying to understand the forces that had been manipulating his life without his knowledge. It felt as though a veil had been lifted, and now he saw things for what they truly were, distorted, hidden in plain sight, but real all the same. As the wind rustled the leaves in the trees nearby, Keanu wondered how much of his life had been directed by invisible strings, manipulated by forces he couldn't even begin to fathom. Was he just a pawn in some grand scheme, or had he truly been chosen for something greater? Marcus had told him he would face trials, that not everyone would make it through. That weighed heavily on him. The people he loved, his friends, his family, what did this choice mean for them? Would they be pulled into this madness too? Or would he be left standing alone at the end of it all? "Keanu," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the silence. The man's expression was unreadable, a mixture of sympathy and something darker. "There is one more thing you need to understand. You may not like it, but this path, and it's not just about you. It's about everyone. The fate of many rests on the choices you make from here on out." Keanu turned to face him, the fear creeping back into his chest. "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What do I even want from this? I just wanted to go back to a normal life." Marcus gave him a grim look. "Normal doesn't exist anymore, Keanu. Not for you. Not for any of us. Once you've seen the truth, there's no going back." Keanu swallowed hard. His hands were clenched. At his sides, the uncertainty gnawing at him. "But what happens if I fail? What if I make the wrong choice?" Marcus studied him for a long moment, then said, "The consequences will be far greater than you realize. It's not just your life at stake anymore. Everything you've known, everything you care about, it's all connected. But you have the power to make a difference, to change the course of what's to come." Keanu wanted to believe him, to believe that he could somehow make things right. But the fear gnawing at him didn't subside. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that everything about this moment was terrifying. Who could I trust? Now, he wondered. The world around him felt so unfamiliar now. It wasn't just the flat tire or the strange man who had helped him. It was the nagging sense that he was caught in the middle of something far bigger than he could comprehend. "How do I even begin?" Keanu asked, the words escaping him before he could stop them. "What do I do now?" Marcus's eyes softened for a brief moment, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. "You start by accepting what's happened. You've been chosen for a reason, Keanu, and that reason will reveal itself to you, but only if you're willing to face it head-on. Don't run from the truth. Face it. Embrace it." The words hung heavy in the air, each one a weight on Keanu's chest. Could he do it? Could he truly face whatever was waiting for him? "You'll find what you need," Marcus added, his voice carrying a strange confidence. "But you need to trust yourself. Trust that what you're feeling now, the fear, the confusion, it's all part of the journey. You've got the strength to get through this. Don't doubt it." Keanu felt a flicker of resolve spark deep inside him. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe. The only way out of this was through it. The fear wasn't going to go away, but perhaps it wasn't something to be avoided. Maybe it was something to be confronted. "All right," Keanu said, his voice steadying as he made a decision. "I'll face whatever comes next. I won't run." A small, almost imperceptible nod from Marcus was all the confirmation Keanu needed. The man was right. There was no running from this. No matter how dark or terrifying the journey might be, it was his to take. The truth had found him, and there was no turning back. As Keanu turned to leave, his mind whirling with questions and fears, he felt a new sense of determination. The road ahead was uncertain, and he wasn't sure what he would find when he reached the end. But for the first time since all of this began, Keanu felt as if he was finally ready to take the first real step forward. Before he left, he glanced back at Marcus one last time, seeing something in his eyes that made him wonder if this moment was part of a much larger, more complex story, one that stretched far beyond just him. He'd been given a glimpse into that world, but there was still so much left to uncover. "Thank you," Keanu said quietly, his voice sincere. "For everything." Marcus didn't respond immediately. Instead, he gave a brief, almost imperceptible smile before stepping back into the shadows, disappearing into the night as if he were part of it himself. Keanu exhaled deeply, the weight of his decision settling over him like a cloak. The journey had just begun, and the unknown stretched out before him like an endless horizon. But for the first time in a long time, Keanu Reeves felt something inside him shift. He wasn't just the actor. He wasn't just the celebrity. He was someone caught in the middle of something far bigger than anything he had ever experienced. And now it was up to him to find out what that something was. What would you do if you were in Keanu's shoes? What choices would you make if faced with an unimaginable journey? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. There's much more to come. Keanu woke up the next morning with a restless mind. The events of the previous night haunted him. Marcus's words, the strange encounter, the unsettling sense that his entire life had been nothing more than preparation for something he couldn't quite understand. It felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking into a dark abyss, unsure of whether he should jump or turn back, but deep down he knew there was no turning back. His decision had been made. Now he had to follow through. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, Keanu tried to push away the thoughts of fear and uncertainty that gripped his mind. He got out of bed, heading for the bathroom, his hands shaking slightly, as he splashed cold water on his face. The reflection in the mirror wasn't the same person he had seen the night before. There was something different in his eyes, a sense of resolve but also an undeniable weight of the unknown. His phone buzzed on the counter, and for a brief moment he wondered if it would be another strange message from Marcus. But when he picked it up, it was a text from his longtime friend Alex. "Keanu, you good? Haven't heard from you in a while. Let's catch up soon. Call me." Keanu stared at the screen, hesitating. Should he tell Alex what was happening? Could he even begin to explain the bizarre encounter, the darkness that was closing in around him? He didn't have the answers, and he wasn't sure if he could drag anyone else into this. But he needed someone he trusted, someone who could help him make sense of the madness. He typed back quickly, "I need to talk." "It's urgent. Can we meet?" A few seconds later the reply came, "Of course, let me know when and where." Keanu knew he couldn't keep running from this. He had to confront the truth, not just for himself, but for the people around him. Marcus had made it clear that this wasn't just about him, but about something much larger, something that would affect everyone in its path. He had to start looking for answers, and he needed help to do it. Later that afternoon, Keanu met Alex at a small cafe, the familiar hum of conversations and clinking mugs offering a temporary distraction from the whirlwind inside his mind. Keanu sat down across from Alex, his friend's face full of concern. "Keanu, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost," Alex said, raising an eyebrow. "What's all this about?" Keanu hesitated. How could he even begin to explain everything that had happened? The strange man, the flat tire, the cryptic warning, the sudden shift in his reality. He knew Alex wouldn't believe him, and part of him didn't want to burden his friend with the madness he was tangled in. But if he wanted to move forward, he couldn't do it alone. I don't know how to start," Keanu said, his voice low, the words coming out in fragments. "But I need you to listen. There's something happening, something I can't explain, and I need your help." Alex's expression softened. "Keanu, whatever it is, I'm here for you. You know that, right? Just tell me what's going on." Keanu took a deep breath and began to tell Alex everything. Marcus, the flat tire, the strange words, the sense that his entire life had led him to this moment. He spoke of the darkness that was closing in around him, the sense that the world he knew was unraveling. The more he spoke, the more he realized how insane it all sounded, how unbelievable it must seem. But Alex didn't interrupt. He just listened, his eyes never leaving Keanu's. When Keanu finished, the silence hung heavy between them. Alex didn't look shocked, but he didn't look convinced either. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, taking in everything Keanu had said. "I don't know what to make of all this, man," Alex finally said, his voice thoughtful. "But one thing I do know, you're not the type to make up crazy stories. So whatever this is, I believe you. I think we need to figure out what's going on, and we need to do it fast." Keanu nodded, feeling a slight sense of relief. "I don't know where to start, but Marcus, this guy, he said I was chosen. He said there are forces at work here, things I can't even begin to understand. But there's something I need to find, something that will explain all of this." Alex's eyes narrowed. "Okay, but what's the next step? Do we just sit here and wait for answers to come to us? Because honestly, that doesn't sound like The Keanu I know. You're a fighter, man. You go out and get what you need to know. Keanu smiled faintly, grateful for his friend's unwavering support. I think I have to find Marcus. I need answers from him, but I don't know where to look. I have no idea where to begin. Well, it's clear he's involved, so let's track him down, Alex said, a hint of determination in his voice. Maybe he left some clues. Maybe he's trying to guide you. Either way, we won't get any answers sitting here. Keanu felt a surge of adrenaline, the kind that he used to feel before an action scene in one of his films. This wasn't a movie, though, and there were no scripted lines or rehearsed stunts, but the sense of purpose that had started to form within him was now undeniable. He was going to find Marcus. He had to. All right, Keanu said, standing up. Let's get started. As Keanu and Alex left the cafe, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that the road ahead was far more dangerous than he realized. The uncertainty that had gripped him the day before was now an almost tangible force, pushing him forward. But at least now he wasn't alone. He had someone he could trust, someone who could help him make sense of this madness. Keanu didn't know what he would find, but he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. And so the search began. What would you do if you were in Keanu's shoes? How would you approach the unknown? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button to stay tuned for more chapters. Keanu and Alex had spent the past few days investigating any lead they could find. They combed through Marcus's words, dissecting every clue with a fine-tooth comb. Marcus had mentioned that Keanu was chosen for something, but what exactly did that mean? And why had he been singled out? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but there was no going back now. Keanu couldn't afford to question his purpose any longer. His only choice was to keep pushing forward. The tension between Keanu and Alex had grown, not because of a disagreement, but because they both felt the gravity of the situation. They had become like detectives in a case far beyond their understanding, chasing shadows that led to more questions than answers. Every night they'd meet to share new findings, but the puzzle pieces seemed to fit together less and less. The more they learned, the more complex the mystery became. One afternoon, as they sifted through old records and news articles, Alex's voice broke the silence. Keanu. I think I've found something, Alex said, his tone a mix of excitement and apprehension. Keanu leaned in, his heart racing. What is it? Alex pointed to a newspaper article from several years ago, its headline reading, Local man mysteriously disappears, last seen helping actor on highway. Keanu's eyes widened as he scanned the text. The article detailed the disappearance of a man named Richard Rick Williams, a mechanic who had been helping a Hollywood actor, whose name was conveniently left out of the report, on the side of a highway. The report mentioned that Rick had been last seen on the same highway where Keanu's flat tire incident had occurred. This can't be a coincidence, Keanu muttered, staring at the article in disbelief. I think this Rick guy was the last person. Marcus helped, and look, he disappeared right after. Alex looked up, his brow furrowing. You think Marcus is somehow connected to this? That this is all part of the same story? Keanu nodded, a chill running down his spine. I don't know yet, but we need to find out. We need to track down Rick's family, his friends, anyone who might have known him. Without another word, the two set off on a new mission, this time to uncover what happened to Rick. Keanu's mind was racing as they drove toward the last known location of the mechanic, a small town not far from the highway. As they arrived, in the town, the atmosphere was thick with a sense of foreboding. The quiet streets and worn-down buildings painted a picture of a place where time had stood still. Keanu couldn't help but feel that they were treading on dangerous ground. The air felt heavy, as though they were walking into a trap they couldn't. See? They arrived at a modest house at the edge of town, Rick's home. A for sale sign was planted in the front yard, indicating that whoever had lived here had long since left. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. After a few moments, Alex looked over at Keanu. Well, it doesn't look like anyone's home, Alex said, his voice tinged with frustration. But maybe someone in town knows something. Keanu nodded. Let's talk to the neighbors. The first person they spoke to was an older woman who had lived next door to Rick. She was hesitant at first, but after a little persuasion she finally agreed to speak with them. "Rick? Oh yes, I remember him," the woman said, her voice soft but steady. "He was a good man, always helping others. But it's strange, he didn't seem like the type to just disappear. Last time I saw him, he was working on a car in his driveway. That was about a week before he was gone." "Did he ever talk about leaving?" Keanu asked, his mind racing. "Did he mention anything strange? Something about a man, maybe someone he was helping?" The woman thought for a moment before nodding slowly. "He mentioned helping a Hollywood actor, but he didn't say much. Just that he had been in the right place at the right time. After that he became obsessed with something. He talked to himself a lot, muttering about destiny and fate. Said he was chosen for something, like a mission. But then he just vanished." Keanu felt his heart skip a beat. The words chosen and mission echoed in his mind. It was the same language Marcus had used. There had to be a connection. "Did he ever mention a name or say where he was going?" Alex pressed, eager to dig deeper. "No, but—" The woman hesitated again, then pointed down the street. "He did spend a lot of time at that old building down there, the one with the strange symbols on it." Keanu and Alex exchanged a glance. The mystery was deepening, and the further they delved, the stranger it became. It was clear that Rick had been involved in something far bigger than anyone had realized, and now Keanu was caught up in it too. "Thank you," Keanu said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We'll look into it." As they walked down the street toward the building the woman had mentioned, Keanu's stomach tightened. He didn't know what they would find, but he knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just about a flat tire or a chance encounter. Whatever Marcus had been trying to tell him, whatever had led Rick down this path, it was all connected. And Keanu was right in the middle of it. The building loomed ahead, its faded exterior covered in strange markings, symbols Keanu couldn't decipher. As they approached, he could feel the tension in the air, as though the building itself was watching them. "This is it," Alex said, voice hushed. "Are we ready for whatever's inside?" Keanu looked at his friend, determination in his eyes. "We have no choice, we're already in this too deep." With that, they stepped toward the door and the mysteries that awaited inside. What do you think lies behind the door? Will Keanu and Alex uncover the truth or face a danger they can't escape? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter in this thrilling journey. Keanu's heart raced as he reached for the door handle of the mysterious building. The air around them felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Every step forward felt like a step into the unknown, a place where reason and logic no longer applied. This wasn't a story about a flat tire or an accident on the road anymore. It was something far bigger, something that was slowly unraveling right in front of him. "Are you sure about this?" Alex asked, his voice low, tinged with doubt. Keanu didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. What he was sure of, however, was that this journey had led him here, and there was no turning back. They had to confront the truth, no matter how strange or dangerous it seemed. With a deep breath, Keanu pushed the door open. The interior of the building was dimly lit, and the air smelled stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Keanu and Alex stepped inside, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The walls were covered with strange symbols, symbols that looked almost ancient, yet somehow familiar. They appeared to pulse, as though they were alive, waiting for something. At the far end of the room, a single desk sat in the middle of the floor. It was old, worn, and covered in dust, but what caught Keanu's eye was the large, leather-bound book resting on top of it. The book was open, but its pages were filled with markings and writing that made no sense to him. As Keanu approached the desk, he felt an odd pull, an almost magnetic attraction to the book. "Do you think this has something to do with what Marcus said?" Alex asked, peering over Keanu's shoulder. Keanu didn't answer immediately. His fingers hovered over the pages as he scanned the strange writing. It was in a language he didn't recognize, but there was something about it that felt familiar. He felt as though he had seen it before in a dream or a memory, but where? And why couldn't he remember? Without thinking, Keanu turned the pages of the book, his fingers tracing the strange symbols. The more he read, the more the world around him seemed to shift. It was as if the very air in the room had thickened, like reality was warping, bending. In response to the words in the book, suddenly a loud crash sounded from behind them. Keanu whipped around, his heart in his throat. Standing in the doorway was none other than Marcus. Keanu froze, his breath catching in his chest. Marcus's eyes were wild, his face pale, and he was holding something in his hand, a small glowing orb that seemed to hum with energy. "You should never have come here." Marcus's voice was low, almost a whisper. "You're not supposed to know." Keanu's mind raced. "What is this? What does this all mean? Why did you help me? What's the book? And why does it feel like I've been part of this all along?" Marcus took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "You were chosen for a reason, Keanu. You've been a part of this long before you ever realized it. The book, the symbols, the path you're on, it's all connected. You were meant to find it. But what you don't understand is that there are forces at work here that are far beyond your comprehension. Forces that control everything." Keanu took a step closer, unable to tear his gaze from the glowing orb in Marcus's hand. It was like a beacon pulling him in. He could feel it, like a pulse deep in his chest, like it was calling to him. "You're not just an actor, Keanu," Marcus continued, his voice growing more intense. "You've always been part of something bigger. Your life, your choices, they were guided. But now you've come too close to the truth, and the truth is something no one can handle." Keanu shook his head, his mind racing. "What do you mean? What truth? What is this all about?" Marcus raised the orb, and for a moment, the room seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. "This orb, this is what connects everything. It's been hidden for centuries, and it was meant to stay hidden. But now it's here, and everything. Gaia's falling apart. The world you know, the life you think you're living, it's all a facade. This is where it ends." Keanu's stomach lurched. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the picture they formed was one he wasn't sure he could accept. Before he could respond, Marcus suddenly lunged forward, the orb in his hand now glowing brighter than ever. Keanu instinctively reached out to stop him, but as his fingers brushed against the orb, everything changed. A flash of light erupted in front of him, and the world seemed to split in two. Keanu's vision blurred, and for a split second, it felt as though time itself had stopped. The room, Marcus, the book, all of it seemed to fade away, replaced by a vast emptiness. He was standing in a place that was neither here nor there, a place that defied all logic. Then, in the distance, he saw something, a figure walking toward him through the void. As the figure drew closer, Keanu's breath caught in his throat. The person walking toward him was himself. "Keanu," the figure said, its voice echoing in the vast emptiness. "You've been searching for the truth. But what if the truth is you?" Keanu woke up, gasping for air, his body drenched in sweat. He was back in the building, standing next to Alex, who looked just as confused as he felt. What just happened?" Alex asked, his voice shaky. Keanu didn't have the answers. In that moment, he realized something far more unsettling. The journey he had been on, the people he had met, the choices he had made, they were all part of something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. And the truth. The truth was not just something he needed to uncover, it was something he was always meant to become. Keanu stared at the glowing orb in Marcus's hand, now lying on the floor. As the light from the orb dimmed, Keanu felt a shiver run down his spine. The mystery was far from over. It was only just beginning. What do you think the truth is that Keanu is about to face? How do you think his story will unfold from here? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more updates.